Welcome back to my channel. I'm Susan Lynn. I'm a psychic and a medium and a spirit navigator, whatever the hell that means. But anyway, I am so happy to be with you today. I've got two of my favorite astrologers right here with me. And look, before you think Susan's doing astrology, no, just stop right there. We got you. We got you. You know, I bring the astrologers that speak human. But it's really important what we're going to talk about today because the election is only a week and a half away. And these ladies are going to help you understand why we're here. Wouldn't you like to know that? Don't you all always ask me, Susan, why is this happening? Well, here we are today. I'm fixing to tell you. Well, no, I'm not going to tell you, but they're going to tell you why this is happening because it turns out astrology is really good at this stuff because the planets or whatever the heck they are, she'll tell us. But anyway, they were in a certain place at a certain time in history, right? And they're back again. And that's why we're repeating these same lessons. So guess what? Celeste Brooks, Dabney Lawless are here to help us understand why we're going through this and what we can expect. So just get comfortable and get ready to understand what you don't understand, because I am. And I forgot the popcorn, but I'll be back. Okay. Thank you both for coming on the channel again and together. We have the three of us together. This is definitely some energy. How are you both?
Fantastic.
We're good. Yeah, I just got to spend some time with Celeste in person at an astrology conference. So we were powwowing all about Kamala Harris and how we are so optimistic and we are ready to take this on.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Cups energy between the three of us.
Three of cups, yes, with lots of sage and crystals and candles. But Celeste was teaching at this astrology conference, right? That's awesome. You guys should check out Celeste's social media. I'll have all that in the description. You should also check out Dabney's social media. They both offer readings. Mm-hmm. So please check out what they offer. I've had readings by both of them. I can highly recommend them. So you guys know that I'm not a chit chatter. I like to get right down to business. I'm like, I want to know so bad. Why are we doing this? Okay, Dabney, take it over. Let's understand.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the historical stuff, but I promise I'm going to make it very interesting and how this has so much to do with feminism. So all of you ladies out there and men that have fought for women's rights over the last however many decades, we are going to make some big progress right now. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. And then Celeste is going to be talking about, I'm going to kind of hand it over to her so we don't talk over each other. And she's going to talk about election day and the aftermath and inauguration day and kind of all that we have to expect right now. So she's going to bring us back into the present after I've taken us through this little meandering tour of history, just to give us some context about what I think is happening right now and why I think we're really well poised to make some big progress. So the first planet, Toid, it's actually an asteroid. You don't need to know anything about that. It's called Chiron. So you may have heard people talk about Chiron as the wounded healer. Okay, so I'm looking at historical astrology. So when I do an astrology reading one-on-one, whenever I look at Chiron in a chart, which I do, I take very close attention to Chiron more than other astrologers because I find it so powerful about where we've been hurt in our life. Early on, something didn't go right, and it's kind of like a lifetime experience to reclaim our power and to then give back to other people. So in the United States, so countries have charts. So the United States chart has Chiron in Aries. Well, we have Chiron in Aries right now in the sky. So what that means is that the United States collectively, not only have we been going through our Pluto return, which I talked about on Susan's channel a couple months ago, but we're also having our Chiron return. And when you have your Chiron return, and we've had several Chiron returns, but we're in another one now, it is this really wonderful place, personally and collectively, to make progress. So if you're in a personal Chiron return, you're going to make progress in an area that hurt you in the past, where you felt pushed down. And then you kind of come to an acceptance of where that pain is and where you can then give back to society and other people, where you can heal other people. Okay, so Chiron and Aries. A big theme with Chiron and Aries is autonomy, feeling like you have a right to exist, feeling like you have some agency. So that's the big thing. So there's a wound around, the United States in general, like, do we have a right to exist? And especially for women. Okay, this country was formed by men. And we've talked about this. It's a very patriarchal, landed gentry. Men were the ones that kind of wrote all the laws and said, this is what's going to happen, right? But women, there was just as many of us. And we were, kind of along for the ride, but we were hurt because we were not given a seat at the table. So every time in history, when we've had this Chiron return, so when Chiron comes back, not specifically to the place that it was, but just in Chiron and Aries, the United States has seen huge jumps for women in power. Because women suddenly have this kind of like, wait a minute, I deserve agency. I deserve autonomy. I have a right to be here too. And so I went all the way back and I started looking at patterns about big feminist things in the United States, like milestones. Okay, 1872, we had the very first woman run for president under the Equal Rights Party. Okay, now every single one of the things that I'm about to say, Chiron was in Aries. So every single one of these things that I'm going to be, listing and talking about. 1919. Woodrow Wilson was the president. He had a stroke. And his wife, Edith Wilson, became actually the first female president because they didn't want to let anyone know he had a stroke. So in essence, she took over for him. And she ran things behind the scenes. And so people know, historically, look back on that and say she was the first female president because it was kind of like a secret. You have to say something, Celeste?
Yes, Aries rules the head and Chiron wounds. So he had a stroke. So I just had to say that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so
that's so literal.
She was making all the decisions on his behalf. And so we had our first female president. Then in 1920, we had two women, both suffragettes, who received the very first vote at the Democratic National Convention to become president. So now they didn't become candidates, but that was the first vote. Then what happened in 1920? Anyone gets a gold star if you know.
Women I didn't know I was supposed to be studying.
Okay, 1920.
Wait, what did Celeste say?
The right to vote, right?
Thank you. You get a gold star. Celeste gets a gold star. Women got the right to vote for the very first time in this country. So that was a very big deal. That we had the first female senator in 1922. 1923, the Equal Rights Amendment was introduced for the very first time. And I know a lot of people watching this channel fought for the Equal Rights Amendment back in the 70s. So to you, I say, it's coming back. So fast forward. Okay, so then we got kind of a lull, right? Then fast forward, 1969, Shirley Chisholm is the first woman to run. She's the first Black woman and the first woman to become a presidential nominee, a candidate for a major party in the primary. So Shirley Chisholm was a very big deal. 1972, still Chiron and Aries. We have Title IX passed. Now, if you don't know what Title IX is, that says that women deserve equal rights, or, sexual orientation. You get rights in education. You can't discriminate, basically. That wasn't very articulate. I'm sorry, but you know what I'm saying, I hope.
Yeah.
You caught it? Okay. So think about what's come back around now. All the people freaking out about transgender people in sports and trying to undo Title IX. That's a big thing. And that was Chiron and Aries. We had the first female CEO of a Fortune 500 company in 1972. And then once again, 2020, we had Kamala Harris become the first woman to become the vice president and the first person of color to become the vice president, to be sworn in. And that is something that Susan and I were talking about. How come we don't talk much about that? That was incredibly groundbreaking. She broke a glass ceiling that has never been broken. She is the first female to become the vice president, not just a nominee. She sits in that position now. And there was, it was kind of like that happened, and then we never talked about it. And if anything you heard about her happened to be, it was like backlash against her. There wasn't really a lot of stories that kept her kind of back here, but anyway. Okay, fast forward 2022, Roe v. Wade is overturned. So, not so hot for all of us. Oh, I forgot one big thing. 1973, Roe became law of the land. That was also Chiron and Aries.
Okay. And it has a 50-year approximate cycle. So it comes back every 50 years.
So one last thing before I see if you guys have any thoughts on all of this. In 1777, so going way back, okay, I wanted to keep it a little bit more modern with things that we would all have but in 1777, Pluto was in Capricorn like it is now, and Chiron was in Aries. And there was a law passed that stripped away a woman's right to vote. So when women first came to this country, there was no laws that said women couldn't vote. They were just kind of a part of the family. Like they had agency to speak within the family, and the men voted on behalf of the family. But then in 1777, they actually codified we don't want women voting. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention to all the bro podcasts out there, but there are a lot of them on the right wing that are saying that the 19th Amendment in 1920 was a bad thing and that they would like to take women's vote away from them. Pluto is currently in Capricorn, but it is moving into Aquarius, and that will be the next thing that I talk about. But I want to open it up and see if you have any thoughts on what I just shared.
Yeah, I think it's great to remind us that Chiron and Aries has been associated with women's advancements, and the fact that Roe v. Wade was overturned is the reason there was not a red wave in 2020, 2022, and it's part of the reason Kamala Harris is going to, I predict, win in 2024, because women are outraged. Now, also something to keep in mind, Aries is the fourth house in the United States of America's chart. It rules the fourth house of land and the rebel party or the opposition party. So two things we've seen with Chiron and Aries as well with our Chiron return is these massive storms, the Texas fires. So there's been a lot of damage to the land of the United States with this cycle. And we had an eclipse as well, a big new moon that impacted our chart. And Donald Trump being almost assassinated is also really feels like Chiron and Aries. Aries rules the head, and that bullet grazed his ear. So that's another thing that came to
the reality is, I agree 100%. When they overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, they set up the circumstances for which women are going to be coming out in droves in this election, and women are going to be the ones that decide that Kamala Harris is going to be our next president. I firmly believe that. And I do believe that there is this historical precedent for women taking huge leaps in their leadership role and saying, no, you're not going to take that away from me. And that's why we're seeing so much backlash. Imagine even 10 years ago, even during the Clinton-Trump election, had some of these just sickening misogynistic talking points been out there, there would have been such backlash. But now it's just, we're all so inured to it. It's just everywhere. And so, the trad wife movement, trying to put women back in the kitchen and really kind of trying to put us back into a box, and even talking about, not, protecting IVF and things like that. And so all of that, I think, really knowing that Chiron in Aries in the US chart, it's just like the energy is that much more of a motivator for women to get out and vote more than they ever have been. And like, I'm talking about cosmic energy, not just like intellectual. It's like something like, compels you to stand up for yourself for the first time in some of these women's lives.
Yeah, we're hearing all these stories about women, Chiron and Aries, like bleeding out in parking lots, or having all of these literal physical injuries because they can't get reproductive health care, even if their life is in danger.
These, cycles repeat themselves. So another cycle that's about to repeat itself is Pluto going into Aquarius.
Oh, did Susan have anything to say about?
No, I'm enjoying this conversation. I 100% agree with everything. I would just say it's interesting you brought up Shirley Chisholm, because when I was watching Kamala Harris last night in Houston, that's who came through to me. It's like her spirit was there with Kamala Harris in Houston as a sort of a guiding light or a guiding force. So it's interesting that you would bring that she really has a historic kind of footprint, or a historic, note in this whole process.
I mean, what
I want to say one more thing. There's a great documentary about Shirley Chisholm that I would highly recommend people check out, about her run for president.
Nice.
Yeah, no, she is such a powerhouse figure. She is one of my heroes. And one of the things that you'll see is every single one of these subsequent Chiron in Aries cycles progresses further, right? Like, you first have a woman saying like, we deserve this, but nothing happens. Then you have a woman who's actually behind the scenes running things. And then you have a woman who's out front leading, and people are, there's a big movement behind her. So you have to realize, like, it's all progress. So I really do believe, maybe Hillary Clinton's timing was somewhat off, right? Here we are, like, I do believe there's something very fated about Kamala Harris. And I mean, this is not just astrological. It is literally like just the feeling I get from seeing how all the pieces fell into place for her. And would she have won the primary? She may not have, simply because people feel like, oh, well, this country's not ready for a female president.
That's right.
So even if they wanted to vote for her, I know I personally wanted Elizabeth Warren, but I voted for Bernie Sanders. And the reason why was because I felt like, well, other people would. And I look back on that, I'm like, wow, that was really myopic and a bad choice that I made. This was during a primary 2020. Anyway, so I'm sharing too much. But the bottom line is, it's all progress. So now we've got this other big thing happening, very big thing, which is Pluto's going into Aquarius. So we have been in our Pluto return. And when Pluto has been in Capricorn, it's about hierarchies and government. And I did a whole thing with Susan. You can go back and watch that, and I won't go into all of that. But we are in the very tail end of that. It is in the 29th degree. It is like literally like about to flip into Aquarius on November 19th. So I'm super bummed it wasn't just a little bit before, but it really is this final piece. And so when Pluto moves into Aquarius, what we see is historically the rise of democracies. It's the American Revolution. It's the French Revolution. It's the Age of Enlightenment. This was the last time Pluto was in Aquarius. These were the themes we were working under. We were working under the Industrial Revolution. It has to do with dismantling hierarchies and making things more equal. So, historically too, that women have become very powerful leaders throughout different cycles of Pluto and Aquarius. Now, we've still lived in a patriarchy for ages. So, do we have like a ton of examples of women ruling the world? No, we don't, not in modern times, but there have been really amazing, coincidences. Like we were just at a conference where someone talked about the warrior Celtic Celtic queen Boudica, who tried to overthrow the Roman Empire. And she is kind of held up in the UK as somebody who fights for justice, and that was a female warrior. And then also Queen Elizabeth I came into power during Pluto and Aquarius, and that was considered a time of great. It was kind of like a renaissance. It was, it was this time of, big ideas and flourishing of the UK. So what we can expect this time, I do believe, is a challenge to the patriarchal systems that we have been under and a rise of female power for sure. So any thoughts on that before I go to the last little piece that I have?
Yeah, I had a download last night about Pluto in Aquarius that has been coming in. So the United States is in its Pluto return, and Pluto takes about 248 years to go around the chart. And if anyone saw Beyonce talking last night, she talked about the transition from Pluto in Capricorn to Pluto in Aquarius, and she even said 248 years. So I want you to think about the opposition. So Capricorn, big business, big government, the elderly is opposite Cancer. And since 2008, when Pluto went into Capricorn, we've seen the shadow sides of government and what it does to take away the safety and security and oppress the people. And America's a Cancer sun, so we really feel it. Like too big to fail was a big thing with the home mortgages, all of that. And Donald Trump rode down that escalator, a Pluto and Capricorn figure, when Pluto was at 15 degrees of Capricorn. So midway between the cycle, each sign has 30 degrees. And it wasn't Hillary's time. It just was not. And now we're at Pluto at the 29th degree. And that's the last degree of the sign. So when a planet enters a sign, it's like new energy and it's building. By the time we get to the last degree, it is a crisis of decay and it's like crumbling. And just think about how we thought it was going to be Trump and Biden, these two very elderly men. Biden representing, a longtime government person, and Trump a big business person, both in stages of decay, but trying to hold on. And Pluto it went into Aquarius in 2023, then went back into Capricorn, and now it's coming back into Aquarius. And the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of Pluto in Aquarius. This beautiful woman welcoming, caretaking the justice. And who looks like Pluto in Aquarius? It just came to me last night. Kamala Harris literally is Pluto in Aquarius in the flesh. Pluto rules power. And Donald Trump is Pluto in Capricorn in the flesh, in a suit, money, 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 money.
Yes.
Shadow Capricorn is greed, materialism, dominating in these hierarchical systems. Me, 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 me. Pluto in Aquarius, power to the people, a people-powered agenda, all that kind of thing. But I'll save it. But as Pluto moves back, it's about to leave a Capricorn for the last time for 248 years, opposite Mars. And then it's like the lion, when Mars goes into Leo, grabs Pluto, grabs Lady Liberty by just the bottom of her robe, trying to hold her back, is what I'm seeing as what this election is, from going into the future of a more equal utopian kind of energy.
And you've got to recognize the two biggest endorsements of this election season have been Taylor Swift and Beyonce, right? That is power to women. That is women taking their control back and showing that they mean business. And Kamala Harris is it's we won't go back, and it's freedom. So it's about the future, and this is all Pluto and Aquarius stuff. So there is a reevaluation of labor, and like, what does it mean to be the unions, but also like women in the workplace. And Susan, I was watching one of your shows the other day, and you were talking about how, like, I'm of that latchkey generation where we were taught, like, you're supposed to do it all. And when I had my child, like, it almost broke me. It really almost broke me. And because I really was under this impression that I was supposed to do it all, and I was cleaning the house, and I was cooking the meals, and I was doing the laundry and taking care of the child, and I had a full-time, very important corporate job. And I remember like being like, I think I'm broken. Like, that's how I felt. And so I love that you talked about this next generation of women who like saw us break and say, no more, And so my big prediction, though, I do believe that during Pluto and Aquarius, we will see the Equal Rights Amendment pass. So I hope I am correct, but I do believe it is already, ratified by the number of states that it needs to be ratified by. It just needs to be adopted by the Senate. They changed the laws in the House, saying that there was no barriers. So basically, if we can take back the Senate, and we can take back the House, and we can get Kamala Harris, and there is absolutely nothing stopping us from having the Equal Rights Amendment at this point.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So anything else before I move on to the last little historical piece? I hope I'm not boring people. I hope that they're taking it all in and seeing like the power of these cycles, and like how cool it is that women really are going to decide this election. So Susan, any?
No, I love it. I love all of it. I'm going to watch this video again and take notes.
Okay. All right. So the last piece was, I started thinking about, I was like, okay, well, so all of these things are good and stuff, but I was like, what are the big things that happened, to forward women, like for women's rights, right, in this country? And I started thinking about, another big time was when World War II and women were forced into the workforce, like the Rosie the Riveter, right? And then another big thing that didn't account for the the Chiron and Aries. The other big thing was the birth control pill. I feel like those were the two big things that were not accounted for with Chiron and Aries. Because other than that, like, I really looked at like all the advancements women had been making, and those were, two big things that I felt like weren't represented. And I realized that anytime Uranus, which has to do with change, that's the planet of kind of like lightning striking. Something comes and changes the game on you. Anytime Uranus makes a hard aspect to the United States, again, countries have charts too. Every time it makes a hard aspect to the United States moon, we've had these advancements. And so the moon in the United States chart, or any country's chart, represents the people, but it also represents how women are treated and women's station in the country. And so if you have a hard aspect, so basically something comes along, Uranus is saying something's got to change, and there was these big advancements for women. And so it coincided with Edith Wilson taking over the reins as president behind the scene, but it also coincided directly with, there was, I believe it was a square during the, you don't even care about the aspect. It was a hard aspect. Square opposition, I'm not sure. I didn't write it down. But during World War II, when women entered the workforce, and then when the pill in 1961, when the pill was brought out onto the market, and that changed everything for women's reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, but it also changed everything about our rights in the workplace. Because before that, it was like, if you had a child or you were a mom, you were the first, like, we don't want you. Like, people don't remember what these crazy laws were like back then. So, the sexual revolution and all those things really had a big impact on women's role in society and their own personal power as well. So That's happening again right now during this election. We have a Uranus making a hard aspect to the United States moon. So I just wanted to kind of, throw that out there, that I think that this is going to be an election for women, powered by women. And yeah, I think that we're going to see some big advancements.
And I would say about Uranus that you're talking about, Uranus is the change maker. It rules elections, it rules abortion.
Oh, shoot.
And right
Really?
now it's conjunct a fixed star called Algol. And this is one of the most feared fixed stars that's ever been. It looks like a blinking red light. It's at 26 degrees of Taurus. It coincides with catastrophes throughout history. I mean, people have been following it, and different countries or societies all came up with, it's a difficult energy, but it's also, the Greeks called it Medusa. Then the Medusa mythology is a woman who was punished for being attacked in Athena's temple. And the Talmudic in Hebrew, I don't know if I'm saying it right, they associated with Lilith, Adam's first wife, who would not be subservient. And I think in today, Mr. J.D. Vance brought in this childless cat lady, which is, an Lilith type figure, a woman who wouldn't be subservient and lay under Adam just because he wanted her to. And, this attempt to behead her. So I feel like Uranus conjunct Algol is like fighting for, motivating people to fight for women to fight for their rights versus trying to behead the women's movement with, all of these things like giving families, people with children, more votes, or, like you said, taking away the right to vote. There are people, and a lot of them, talking about how they want to take away, these bros, the right for women to vote.
Oh yeah, did you guys see the other day Tucker Carlson saying that daddy's coming home and that women have been bad and they're going to get a spanking?
Spanking, I saw it.
I did.
So
it was very perverse.
Right, there's that sort of thing, like there's a whole industry of misogyny out there that is really kind of radicalizing young men too. And so that's something that we have to keep an eye on, because there is this kind of backlash to the more women get power and the more advancements we do make, the more it intimidates some people. And so, we are going to continue to kind of see this. And that's what's so amazing about Kamala Harris, is she's not afraid to go into the lion's den. She went on Fox News. I think that there was talks about her going on Joe Rogan. I don't think it ended up happening, but I think that that's it. She's got an Aries moon. She's incredibly courageous. And that again goes back to this fated sense of this just very courageous woman being a role model for us all right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And she is a sun in Libra, which again brings in the Statue of Liberty energy. Because Libra rules justice.
So that sort of brings us to, so that's the historical perspective, just the kind of like, what is this energy we've been feeling? Why has abortion been like, in the news? Why has, transgender and sexuality and all of this, like the childless cat ladies, why has all this stuff been in the news? And it's because of this kind of like, women need to find our own self-respect, and we need to fight back at this point. And that is also the North Node in Aries, which is what we're all collectively under right now. So I don't want to go too over time, because I know Celeste has some amazing information about like right now. So she's bringing us back into the present. So Celeste, if you want to take it away. I don't know, Susan, if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, Susan, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm ready. I'm like sitting I don't know why I didn't get popcorn. I'm like sitting in the theater going, what else is going to happen? And I'm like, I'll take notes later. Yes, please. And I loved everything. I 100% agree with everything you said, Dabney, and both Celeste. Energetically, I'm right with you. This all makes sense to me energetically and from a psychic mediumship standpoint. So I just think you elucidated it better. I think you tied it to history and to things that we can point to and say, wow, this really all happened, and this is happening now, and we can understand it a little bit better. So I'm thrilled so far with what I've learned. So yeah, Celeste, I want to know what's going to happen. What do you think the energy, the astrology holds for us now?
So right now, the astrology is incredibly intense. I will say Mars, which rules competition, is in the sign of Cancer, where it doesn't like to be. I mean, we've seen a lot of this, and I guess a lot of every election, but this psychological warfare, Mars rules war, that's going on. And it's really intense because it's not just Pluto that's at the end of a sign, ready to bring in new energy. Next year, also Saturn, which rules structures, and Neptune, which has to do with beliefs. It's also changing signs, and Uranus, which we've already talked about, is changing signs next year. So we have a tremendous amount of change coming next year that's really unusual energetically. And this election is going to have a lot to do with, what the results of that are going to be. And so right now, Mars is getting ready to oppose Pluto, and it's that energy is in effect at the next new moon. So Mars, the planet of action, drive, assertion. Mars fights, Mars achieves, Mars competes. Opposite Pluto and Capricorn, these power structures around the government. And we can really feel that female energy Dabney was talking about was like, there's all this resistance. But then Mars goes into Leo, and it just feels like to me we're off to the races. Leo is a fire sign, and I got the image of chariots of fire in terms of, of people storming to the polls. I just don't think it's going to be that close. I think the polls are no longer accurate. We've been seeing this for years. Who answers the phone? Who pushes a link on their phone that they don't recognize? I mean, it's this old structure, and a lot of kids, Uranus and Taurus also has to do with climate change, abortion, all of these things around this upheaval. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of people going to the polls, and Donald Trump has a ceiling. He only appeals to a certain number of people, and he's decomposing in front of us. I mean, talking about, it's like he's on this path to eliminate as many voters from his constituency as possible. Because that Mars is going through his 11th house of the collective. I mean, he went to Detroit and said, America, Detroit sucks. He said, auto workers, a child could do your job. He offended the religious people with talking about Arnold Palmer's manhood. I mean, it's just on and on and on. Where last night he was 3 hours late to an event, and then plays a funeral song. I had downloaded that Night of the Living Dead was like his song for a Scorpio season, so which we're in now. It's just wild how he's like him and Elon talking about we need to take care of Elon. Can you imagine sitting there? You're like trying to pay bills, and this person's telling you we need to take care of the richest man in the world rather than like me. So I just feel like he's like losing support, like there's just falling away from him. And we just don't see it yet, but we'll see it on election night. That's energy. And then, but then what happens next is what's a little murky. So does that connect with you, Susan? And
100%, 100%. Sometimes I think, is spirit punking us? I mean, because he just does these things that you think nobody in their right mind would do this. And he's got, I sometimes I do see like I see some of the things I can see the strategy behind it, but for the most part, he's shooting himself in his own foot, like one toe at a time, right? So yeah, like totally agree. And I agree with where you're going. So let's do this.
Yeah, well, I just want to interject really quickly that if you don't know this yet, The Republicans are flooding the polls with bogus polls, and the mainstream media is not. So that it's very frustrating, because what they're doing is and they did this in 2022. That's when everyone said there's going to be a red wave, but then it wasn't. And that is the same thing now. They're just flooding with all of these skewed polls that say it's really close. And the reason they're doing it is because when he loses, they want to be able to say it was rigged and taken away from him. So just be smart about this and know, now you got to vote and you got to get everybody to vote. Don't take it on faith. But the truth of the matter is, it is not as close as they are saying it is. And if it comes out that close, I'm calling shenanigans.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't feel energetically it's that close. America is a Sagittarius rising. That is freedom and independence loving. That's the horse that like that. And there's so much horse imagery that we've seen this year with Beyonce's American Requiem song, and her whole album Cowboy Carter to me is all about the energy of this year. I highly recommend people listen to the whole thing all the way through. There's so much about this. And we're an Aquarius moon. Again, this thing about freedom and independence. So, and wanting there's if you think women are going to walk into en masse this like going back to like being dominated and have a foot on them. Now there's certain people who, get the snow job and just believe it. But for the most part, most people could see and are not willing to give up their rights. Now, what happens at the new moon, where the sun and the moon stand together, and the sun is the leader, the moon is the people, in the chart of the new moon, there's something about us all being in the dark and trine Saturn and Pisces, which delay things. So I feel like we're going to see Kamala won, but there's going to be delays brought on by court cases. And there was something really big where Jupiter, which rules the courts, stationed conjunct the Mars of the United States chart, which rules the opposition party. So I really think there are going to be all these lawsuits, which I think that a lot of people will start to feel like they're really frivolous. Like one guy is proposing that in North Carolina, they just give the Electoral College to Trump because of Hurricane Helene. And I got this download about Hurricane Helene, and I posted it on Instagram, being a reason why the election could be beheaded. Yeah. And so, go
this
ahead,
is
Dabney.
something that you and I talked about, Celeste, and I think everyone should hear this. Vote early, because there are indications that there could be some sort of weather event or something happens on election day that then could could then delay things. And so I think the more that we can get out there and vote early any way possible, please don't leave it to chance, because there's all sorts of things that can go wrong on election day given the astrology. So it's a vote early thing. Even if you're the kind of person that loves to line up and get the sticker and like the pomp and circumstance, maybe just this year make an exception and vote early, because it will matter, I think, potentially in some locales. And unfortunately, some of these swing states where things come down to the wire for us, it's hurricane areas. So, we can't control Mother Nature. So don't give them an excuse to take away our victory.
Yeah, because Mars is opposite at that last degree of crisis and decay in Cancer, a water sign, opposite Pluto in Capricorn. So, which is an earth sign. So that could be tremendous amounts of water causing movement of earth. And I wrote something down a while ago. It's like, it's going to be a landslide. People are going to be so worried about the courts, but it's just a delay. So I think it's just a delay. I think Kamala is going to win because it's going to be too hard for the courts to hand over something to Trump based on the astrology. But there's a lot of moving parts because Saturn's going to go direct on November 15th. And so that could be where the attack plan becomes clearer about what they're going to try to do to stop Kamala's movement forward. I think there are going to be all kinds of court cases that trying to decertify. I mean, it's going to be just wild. Are you feeling that, Susan?
Multiple plans of attack is what the spirit guides are saying. And I had gotten some weather issues on the voting day, as well as specifically about water. I didn't know that, that astrological connection, but I had gotten that rain or just delays in trying to get things done. And certainly I see delays in the courts, but I also want to say, because this is what my guide said to me. Like, so we all see DJT. He's just sort of, like you're saying, crumbling in decay, right? And I really have been pretty conservative about jumping on that bandwagon. Like, I certainly see that he has aphasia sometimes, but what I'm seeing it more and more to where I'm really starting to think, I'm not sure he's going to be cognitively sound by the time the court cases get anywhere. So then you have the judges going, yeah, we're not really going to know because this guy's out to lunch, right? And this is all a bunch of malarkey we're looking at, and we're not doing it. So I don't see the Supreme Court ruling for him. Everybody thinks that they will. I don't see it. And I don't see the lower courts ruling for him either. But it's based on a lot of different things, not just one thing. It's based on his cognitive, his mental acuity. It's based on the fact that the actual court cases are based on just not very sound evidence, that there's too many witnesses who are saying, everything was fine. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I do get the delay. I have gotten that there was going to be a delay for months. So this all makes sense astrologically as well.
People keep talking about Pluto opposing Mars as being potentially explosive, violent energy and domestic terrorism. And there is something to that, and I'm not discounting that. But I also want to say that I believe Mars goes into Leo like on election day or like a day or two.
The day before.
Yeah. And so there is something to me that's very transformational about that versus this kind of like explosion of suppressed anger. I just feel like it moving in works in our favor really nicely as a transformational energy versus kind of domestic terrorism. So I hope I'm right. But that's kind of my little download, is that it just feels transformational. And, Mars is ruled by Aries in Chiron. Remember all that stuff I just talked about. So, there is something here that we can't ignore.
Yeah. And I feel like there's all this worry, and then Mars takes off.
Yep. Mars in Cancer loves to worry about things, let me tell you.
Yeah. But pay attention to what happens in November 14th related to Saturn, like structures, boundaries, the decisions, the plans, I think are going to be important. And then Pluto goes back into Aquarius on November 19th permanently. So that could be where the people collectively, like something about the courts, are they going to take our power away? This is what I'm getting with that. Like there's just this energy, and then Mercury's going to go retrograde November 25th through December 15th, and that's right about December 15th, I think, is right about when the electors are supposed to be certified. So delays, retrograde slow things down. Delays, they're known for reversals and the collapse of anything contemplated. So I'm wondering how that energy, hopefully it'll just be the collapse of these cases trying to go forward. Yes, Susan.
I have a particular thing about Mercury retrograde because you just learned that your computer is going to go down or don't sign any contracts. I mean, you hear all that stuff. But something that I learned was that I get an opportunity to go back and do something. So if there's a project that I just gave up on because I'm like, I just can't, I will literally go back and see if there's, just doesn't always happen, but it happens more often than not, that I can go back and get that project out and all of a sudden just make a lot of forward motion with that. So what I wonder is this Mercury retrograde allows us to go back and count some votes, goes back and
Yes.
settles, actually goes back and corrects some things. Because one thing that's happened that we don't talk about because it's designed to make us not talk about it is that, Dabney mentioned shenanigans with the voting. And I'm here to tell you, they own the narrative about that. So they own the story of we were robbed. It's always going to be us that's robbed. But honestly, really what's happening is it's us that's robbed, right? So it could be that Mercury retrograde, and if there's an explosive quality somewhere within that Mercury retrograde, it could be that there's explosive reporting that proves that it's not us, that actually these people have done it. And you know what? Right now, did you guys see that yesterday? There was a woman, attorney general in Wisconsin, Michigan, I don't know. And she said they found where 2,500 votes had come in that had been canvassed, and that they're 60% of them, she said, are fraudulent. They signed up Amish people, and 60% of them, she says, without hesitation, are fraudulent. We called the people up and said, "Did you do this?" And they said, "No, we didn't do this." They had their driver's license, they had their social security number. Their signature didn't match. Isn't that what the Republicans are always saying to us? Your signature isn't going to match. You see what I'm saying? Mercury retrograde could reverse this back on them. May it be so.
The 1st of November, we're going to have a Scorpio new moon. And we also have to realize that's going to take us through this election. We're going to be under that energy. And Scorpio does reveal secrets. Now, not always under a new moon do you see things clearly, but there's some secretive stuff going on. There are some things beneath the veil that are taking place, but I have to say that we have Kamala Harris, who is much, much more of a warrior energy than Biden was. He really wanted to unite us. He wanted to move forward and close the book on the COVID chapter and the Trump chapter. And unfortunately, that book didn't get closed quick enough because we're still dealing with this. And she gets it. We are going to be under a different paradigm here. So she's not going to just sit back. She's not like Al Gore, who says, "Okay, I give up." No, like I won.
No, she's not going to give up.
She's not going to give up. So I think that's that power. There's that secrecy. There are things going on. Did you see that they put out a viral video about ballots being destroyed? But it was a Russian Russian opposition video. So they're going to keep trying to do this, but we're on to them in a way that we weren't before. There's kind of a new awareness that oh yeah, not so fast. We're not going to just let this go. So I'm really looking forward to next year's energy, where there's a lot of different energy, and it is the cows are coming home, man. So I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah, and at the full moon, so that's great you mentioned the new moons in Scorpio, the full moons in Taurus, an earth sign, conjunct Uranus. So what awareness are the, because Uranus can awaken the people to this deception you're talking about, and Saturn and Pisces going direct. So maybe that's on the 15th. Maybe that's when we'll see some of these things you're talking about, Dabney. But one of the things I wrote down when I got this download about Hurricane Helene being cases around that being part of the trying to the attack plan and the delay, but I even got redo energy because maybe there's another storm coming. And then on December 6th, Mars, which rules competition, goes retrograde in Leo. So I wrote down, it just came through, that all hell breaks loose. So I think around December 6th is important. I was kind of thinking that would be when the MAGA people got really mad. Maybe that's when the courts say, okay, we're
Maybe.
not moving this forward.
Right.
Does that?
That's when the courts throw it out, and then the MAGAs go berserk.
That's what I'm thinking is going to happen, because Mercury is going to be retrograde, then Mars goes retrograde. Mercury in Sagittarius, Mars in Leo. I got like day of rage energy with that. So just be
Wow.
mindful. December, right around then, could be really intense.
Not to scare anyone.
And I do want to say,
I'm just teasing you.
I want to address that because we feel that the MAGAs are oppressive and they're everywhere, but honestly, you guys, they're in pockets, right? Like if you happen to live near, it's like a wasp nest. If you've got a wasp nest over your door, that's a real problem. But it's not at your car, it's not at the church or the grocery store, it's over your door. So please understand that they're not everywhere, but there are going to be pockets of them, and the pockets that are triggered and that have some sort of support will be a problem, right? I do think that's going to happen, but there's not civil war, you guys. Our country is too big. There's too many of us that have got sense about us. But yeah, there will be little pockets. And guess what? It's whack-a-mole. If you want to be a big dummy and jump up with your, whatever it is you got going on, there's going to be an ATF officer meeting you, not only because of Biden or Harris, local police officers who I think a lot of them, not sure about, but on the general, they don't want this flack. They don't want this smoke. So the minute one of these people jumps up and does something, they're going to be dealt with pretty quickly. So that's the other thing I want you guys to understand.
I agree. And I also think that, even if things go sideways, because astrology is not an exact science, we look at patterns. I do believe the pattern says that there is no way that we're not prevailing on some, to move forward. So just be heartened with that. This is a stressful time. The energy right now is off the charts, personally and collectively. I know everybody's feeling it in their personal lives too. It's not just collective. I promise that things will change in 2025. Things will start to change. So, we'll have a whole new set of issues. Life is, always a challenge and a test, but it's going to be very different. And I feel like it's particularly acutely anxiety inducing right now. So just breathe, do everything you can, light your candles, do your meditation, get an astrology reading, preferably from me or Celeste, and watch Susan. Like, seriously, do the things that are going to be self-care for you, because we're gonna get through it. That's the message I want everyone to take away from it. And every single one of you that has fought for women's rights, thank you. And know that I believe that we're going to make progress in the coming year.
Yes.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else, Celeste?
Yeah, but just hold on to your hat. Just know don't let the delays get so frustrating that it causes you internal upheaval. It is in the energy. There's a lot of delay energy. And I looked at Inauguration Day, and, I wouldn't even be surprised if the delays lasted into 2025, even the spring. I mean,
yeah, I've seen that too.
We just gotta be aware that there's a lot slowdowns, but the arc of history bends towards justice. Yeah. And I really feel like Pluto and Aquarius can be power to the people or power over the people, but I don't think the US is ready to give up our democracy. I really feel like this is a fight for democracy. Oh, and I got this other thing I want to ask. It's kind of scandalous. Could I bring it up?
Sure. No, there's not a better channel out there for scandal. Come on.
So I was reviewing. Sometimes I just write and get these things coming through, and I wrote down like a video of a freak off. Because when I got Sex Lies and Videotape for Donald Trump, and I got like a video from, remember those freak off, those
The
Freak
Diddy.
Nick. Freak Nick. What I wrote down is he shows up in a Freak Nick video, like, but that was before the freak off. So I wonder, he and Diddy are friends. Do you think that could be an October surprise, like him showing up in some video that, or is that just totally out there?
Everything, there's no straight line. For those of you guys that want to go from A to B to C, I'm so sorry. It's not going to happen. You're going to go to A to M, back to B, and then over to E. And that's what you guys are picking up on is there is, and they're giving me chills right now. I have gotten that there would be a video that would come out that would be I think his supporters are really on life support. A lot of them, not all of them. Of course, you've got the crazy whatever guy, whatever woman, but the majority of them are on life support. And it wouldn't take much for them to just stay home, to just be like, that's it. So I do pick up on a video coming out. So I do think there is something that's going to come out. But I don't think he's going to be naked. I pray to God that we are given this one last, please have mercy upon our souls. We cannot do this. You've asked too much. I mean, it will be the last thing. There is something out there that's looming.
I really see Kamala as like a Lady Liberty figure.
Absolutely. So my question to both of you that you haven't touched on yet is that when I first saw her all those years ago, and the spirit guides told me she'd be president, and they also told me she'd be the law and order president. So how do you square, I mean, she's a very interesting person, like I say, like she can give you a recipe, get your recipe, give you a hug, help you fix your clothes, and then she can put your butt in jail. You know what I mean? Like she's got it all. But what planetary influences might help us understand how her presidency is going to be one of law and order? And what they told me is by her direction, of course, through the DOJ, if you're on the right and you break a law, you're going to jail. If you're on the left, you break a law, you're going to jail. She doesn't care. She doesn't have time for this. If you break a law, you're going to jail. There's no, perseverating about it the way Biden would. What is that? Does that appear anywhere, Dabney?
The one thing I would say is she's a Libra with an Aries moon. And so Libras are about justice, but they're also quite diplomatic and adept at navigating the political minefield and kind of getting things done in essence. And Aries is a warrior energy, and that's her moon. And so she's pretty tough. Like, she may appear to be someone you want to like have over for dinner and, but at the end of the day, she's a badass and like, she's really just going to get it done. Jupiter is conjunct her North Node during this time of the election. And I think that bodes well for her kind of feeling confident and coming into her own and stepping forward and like not being afraid to take the actions that it seems like we were afraid to take in the past because of perceptions. So that's what I see. What do you think, Celeste?
Well, and she has Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn's at home in Aquarius. Saturn is order. And it also has to do with karmic law, and Aquarius is like equality and everyone being treated the same. So the law and order president treating everyone the same regardless, that really makes a lot of sense with Saturn and Aquarius. Yeah, I'm thinking about the changing energies and how that could relate to what you said, but I think that's just baked into her chart. Now there'll be a lot of resistance to it. Yeah, I feel like there's going to be this undercurrent next year of people trying to cause her to fail. Like a lot of these men bounding together, maybe even striking, like to cause disruption of our supply chains in an effort to Yeah, to
Problems
cause
will not go
trouble.
away.
Mhm.
The problems are not going to go away
No.
overnight. That's for sure. I wish that they would. I desperately do, but I do see that the patriarchy doesn't, all of a sudden it might be crumbling right now, but it is, it's going to hold on with its, cold dead fingers for as long as it can.
Yeah.
So Biden was a Scorpio, right?
Mhm.
So that also, had a lot to do with like behind the scenes deals. And like that was like his thing is like he didn't want to do things out in the open. And so
That's
he
true.
wasn't always talking to the press and things like Obama, who was a Leo, who like really like was all about work in the press and like wanting, charming people. Biden really wanted to do things like kind of his way behind the scenes. And he really kind of felt like he had a plan that he was going to implement. And like a lot of us had felt in the dark as a result of it. And so I think that energy is going to shift too, because she doesn't have that sort of same signature.
Wow.
Yeah, and so one thing I thought was really interesting. So with Hurricane Helene and all of the misinformation saying that FEMA wasn't there and all of that kind of stuff, right around there was something where they showed us behind the scenes where Biden and Kamala were talking to all those heads of agencies on like in the whatever room of the White
Looked
House.
like the Situation Room.
Yes, which we've never seen before. And I'm wondering if Pluto and Aquarius part of it will be the people getting access to what's
Yes.
going on behind the scenes
Yes.
more, and that may become a more regular occurrence.
Yeah, I think he just was so confident in his capabilities, and he just did things the way that they were done. And like unfortunately we're dealing with such a very toxic media situation right now that like without that knowledge there was a vacuum created that I think that hopefully is going to shift next year, where people do feel like they know what's happening and we don't feel as helpless. And that is not in any way to knock Biden. That is just like, he just was like, I'm going to get stuff done and not play your games.
Right. Which normally would work, right? But we were in this amazing changes where misinformation, disinformation was being piped right into people's phones, and Biden just didn't. He just didn't understand that, and Kamala does. Kamala understand. Like what she said last night was she said, "I see you, Gen Z." She said, "I see your power." She said that. I see your power. Yeah. What? So she's basically saying, I validate that you're a big, powerful group of voters, of young people. And I validate that you are not being heard and that you feel like you don't have a home, maybe politically. And I'm here to tell you, I want to be that for you. That she gets it. She just gets it. She gets these young people. She's much younger than Biden, but she's not like a Buddha judge, you know what I mean? But she gets young people. So I do think she's going to be more transparent. Because that's how you deal with these people, is you just be completely transparent, and then they have nothing. You know what I mean? They just can't come back on that.
But she's not gonna like play the game with, like, that's the thing, the game's changing, because like look at the Washington Post and the LA Times wouldn't endorse her, even though their editorial boards wanted to, but the billionaires said no. And so you see her going on podcasts like Call Her Daddy, or Call Me Daddy. Like she's just like, she's gonna go directly to the people, which
she's gonna go to the people. She's gonna go to she came to Houston.
Yeah.
That was with huge. Like 10 days left, this woman comes to Houston, which is like a lost cause, right? With Beyonce, with Willie Nelson. She
Colin Allred.
He killed it last night. He's going to win, you guys. I mean, and I really feel, and now I understand, like I didn't understand, but now I do. Like Sean Harris and Colin Allred are two people we want to win for a lot of reasons, because one's going against MTG and the other one's going against Ted Cruz. But both of them were just sort of like anemic. You know what I mean? Like anemic, like weak. Like I was like, I don't know where their energy is. Well, guess what? They had no money. They couldn't get their message out. You give Colin Allred a chance to talk to people, and let me tell you, This man brings it. People were more fired up for him last night than they were her, you know? So he is a superstar right now. Let me tell you, he is a superstar. He is bringing, he's really peaking at the right time. And I think he's going to top every day that goes by, he gets better. So that's just perfect. I love that. Well, thank you, ladies, for coming on. I really appreciate you so much. It has been fascinating. We've learned a lot. And we have a lot to think about. And most of all, I think forewarned is forearmed. Knowledge can really help us deal with things. It can really help us have some calmness and center ourselves, because we can make sense of things. When you make sense of things, it's not so scary or not so out of control feeling anymore. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. Everybody, please check out their social media, their websites. It's all going to be below in the description. As I said, they're both professional, respected astrologers. You can get readings with both of them. You can follow them on YouTube and social media, and you can learn a lot more about all of the things that's going on and how that's going to impact us all. So I hope you do that. And thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. It was such a pleasure to be with you. And thank you, Dabney, for all that history, the rich history. That was so cool.
I'm a nerd. Sorry, everyone.
We love it.
No, it's
we love it.
fantastic.
No, it was so much good information. I mean, really and truly, this was like a class. Actually, this was like a whole course. So it's going to be invaluable, I think, for everybody. So thanks again. And you guys all take care out there, and we'll see you again really soon. For entertainment purposes only.